We wanted to learn as much as we could during the Big Retrofit, so we tried lots of different measures. In this video, we're going to talk about cavity wall insulation and ventilation. A key way you can make your home more energy efficient is keeping as much of the heat inside of the property as you can, and at the same time, trying to keep as much of the cold out as possible. Cavity wall insulation involves injecting insulation into the cavity between the external wall of the house and the internal wall. By filling the gaps with insulating materials, this forms a barrier to reduce heat loss. This can make the home more comfortable to live in. It's important to note that cavity wall insulation isn't suitable for all property types. Plus, not all homes have cavity walls. They are more typical in homes built after 1930. Walls can be one of the biggest sources of heat loss in a typical home, which is why cavity wall insulation could help. When it came to our property, the pre-retrofit testing found cavity wall heat loss was a significant issue, with 59% of all heat loss occurring through the walls.
There's a lot more to it than just injecting beads or wool into the cavity. You know, the pre-work that needs to be done to understand if the property is suitable for it is quite extensive. You know, along with the elimination of risk of actually creating any kind of adverse effects in the property, such as increased damp levels or mold or mildew growth and that sort of stuff.
So how do we do it? First of all, we work with the surveyor. They check the walls to see if this approach might be worthwhile. To do this, they drilled a small hole in the wall so they could insert a camera to check if the property had an unfilled cavity. They also checked the house wasn't in a position which exposed it to extreme weather conditions, such as regular driving wind and rain, which could increase the chance of moisture entering the cavity. With a strategy in place, work began on injecting the insulating material into the walls. The work itself was reasonably straightforward and didn't involve tearing down any walls to access the cavity gaps. Several holes were drilled into the wall to access the cavity. These were later patched back up and painted over. We used a thermal polystyrene bead filler for the insulation. We fitted the new windows and doors first, so any injected insulation beads wouldn't escape from exposed gaps whilst the sills were removed. Going forward, we will monitor the external walls after the retrofit for evidence of damage or cracks which could allow moisture in. This could lead to internal damp issues. We will also keep the external walls in good repair. A 10-year insurance-backed guarantee was included with the work. Along with the cavity wall insulation, we also installed loft and underfloor insulation to again help with reducing heat loss throughout the property. Cavity wall insulation proved cost-effective when compared to other measures. It was quick to install and caused very little disruption, especially inside the property. We'll talk about costs later. The overall result was a significant reduction in the property's heat loss. Those who have spent time in the home say it has helped to give the place a much warmer, insulated feel. It's important to check with your lender if they will lend on properties with cavity wall insulation in certain circumstances. For example, if it's in timber or steel frame buildings, there are increased issues associated with moisture and damp for these construction types.
It is really important to get the ventilation strategy right. Obviously, once the cavity is insulated, that's going to impact on the airtightness of the property. So you need to start thinking about ventilation strategies for the property, because you do need ventilation in the property because you've got wet air and that is going to condense and cause sort of damp issues, mold and things like that, unless you've got an adequate ventilation strategy in the property, which could be quite simple, like intermittent extractor fans in the wet rooms, which most places have anyway, or it could be something more substantial.
So on the ground floor and first floor, we devised a ventilation strategy that allows air to flow better into and out of the house. This included adding telescopic vents under the floorboards, which helps prevent damp settling in floor joists now that we have underfloor insulation. Buying windows and doors which have trickle vents in them, allowing fresh air to enter the home. Making door undercuts. Removing part of the bottom of internal doors to improve airflow between rooms, and adding decentralized mechanical extraction ventilation, known as DMEV, in the kitchen, toilet and main bathroom. These run constantly, cycling fresh air in with old air going out.
There's a lot of misconception around cavity wall insulation, as there are with heat pumps and other measures, but if it's installed correctly and the correct considerations have been have been reviewed during that process, and the ventilation strategy is correct, then it's a good outcome generally.
It proved beneficial to consider ventilation alongside other retrofit activity. For example, it was easier to install telescopic vents at the same time as the ground floor floorboards were opened for insulation and pipework changes. We found that always having the trickle vents open helps the ventilation, especially because keeping them open has very little impact on heat loss. So, how much did the cavity wall insulation and ventilation strategy cost? Let's start with ventilation. In conjunction with other measures, you could fund this activity through the Energy Company Obligation 4, or ECO4 scheme. Check with your local council or energy supplier to see if you may be eligible for this type of grant. And see the government website on screen now for more information on this scheme. On cavity wall insulation, some homes will be eligible for free or reduced cost insulation under the Great British Insulation Scheme, providing you haven't claimed for something else. Visit the government website on screen now for more information on this scheme. It all depends on your council tax band and Energy Performance Certificate, or EPC rating. To find out more about the Big Retrofit, visit skipton.co.uk/thebigretrofit.